Hello everybody, my name is Dr. Hartman, and today we're going to talk about what is good about vaccines. Let's begin by reviewing back in the early 20th century what the life expectancy of people were back then. It was about 47 years of age. In 1970s, it turns out that the life expectancy was in the mid-70s. 75 years old to like 76 years old. Now, why was that? Well, they attribute it to several factors. One is clean water and indoor plumbing. And another, which is probably one of the most important things, is vaccines. Because children were dying of many vaccine-preventable diseases back then, which we no longer see. However, I'm a physician that has traveled to India, to Haiti, and to Cambodia. I have seen polio, I have seen horrible meningitises, and I've seen terrible pneumonias with kids with chest tubes in their chests. These things don't occur in the U.S. nearly as frequently in these countries, yet these bacteria are still around us. I'd like to go briefly through some of the reasons we give certain vaccines, and I'll give you specifics today. One of the vaccines that got the bad rap and was developed in the 60s was the Measles, Mumps, and Rubella vaccine. I don't know if you know this, but measles was the third most common killer of children in the 1930s, particularly measles pneumonias. And with this vaccine, the rate dropped tremendously. Mumps did cause some infertility in males and deafness as well. And the Rubella, which is still in countries like Haiti, caused children to be deaf, blind, and mentally retarded when they were born. So this vaccine has made a huge difference in these areas of diseases and morbidity and mortality that we don't see anymore. Then there's the DPT, which is diphtheria, P is pertussis or whooping cough, and T is tetanus. Diphtheria, you have a mortality rate of probably about 50% if you get that. Certain countries still have it. In Africa, Haiti has some, and there's even been some cases in Russia. And always remember, if you don't vaccinate, there are risks to that, because there are people that travel, because now we're a global community, and come in and out of the country who may have and carry these diseases. For example, recently in Boston, in the financial district, there's a gentleman who had measles, and it started to spread. Fortunately, the public health department vaccinated people rapidly and stopped the spread of this. Then there's the polio vaccine. Many of you don't even remember the polio era, and grandparents are now dying off that did know the polio era. Myself, I received the oral vaccine in school in the 60s, and I had people and friends that I knew that were in leg braces because they were crippled from polio. And that has been almost completely eradicated from the world. Pockets in India and Africa have still created problems with getting rid of it. And there were a few wild cases in Haiti, and there was a few in Minnesota from people that came from overseas into an Amish population. The other vaccines, and probably one of the most successful vaccines that we have today, is the Hib vaccine, which is against Haemophilus influenza type B. I'm the only physician in a practice that actually saw what this disease did to children, because this vaccine did not come out on the market until 1985. I used to see horrible meningitises where kids were left mentally retarded and or deaf. I saw kids with infected joints, knees, elbows, etc., and kids with horrible pneumonias. And children who had ear infections from Haemophilus influenza type B could go into meningitis and also looked very sick with just having an ear infection. The beauty nowadays is we don't have to worry as much about what a fever means, though we still need to be vigilant, than before 1985 when this vaccine was not around. And also, a newer vaccine that came out in the 90s was the Prevnar vaccine. This is called, the bacteria this protects from, not all types, but 7 of the most serious types, is called pneumococcus. Now, what has happened since then is the causes of the pneumococcus of bacteria causes meningitis and pneumonias, and has dropped the meningitis by 90%. In fact, this practice has not seen a case of pneumococcal meningitis since I've been here. And also it has dropped pneumonias by 30% and ear infections by about 10%. One beauty of all this has been now we can we'll do watchful waiting with ear infections, for example, because of the Hib vaccine and the Prevnar vaccine. So if your child is not vaccinated against Hib and Prevnar, these bacteria are still around in people's nose and mouths and can be potentially life-threatening for your children. And we cannot stress enough the absolute imperative nature of giving your kids these vaccines. Now, you may have read about stressing the immune system. Just remember, there are well over 1 billion bacteria you're fighting in the moment. And adding one additional what's called antigen doesn't make a significant difference as far as stressing your child's immune system. Thank you, and have a good day.